My father had always desired a boy, as soon as I could comprehend his words. Rather, he ended up with Jennifer, my younger sister, and me. Dad had great success as an ophthalmologist, but he had higher aspirations. He opened his first optical shop when I was around 5 years old. I vividly recall the day, including Dad's beaming expression as he cut the ribbon, the shiny displays, and the scent of fresh paint. The years went by, and Dad's business expanded. He obtained a loan, established a lens manufacturing plant, and before long, he owned a chain of retail locations throughout the entire state. Dad's company was a veritable empire by the time I started high school, with 30 stores and a state-of-the-art production facility. In an effort to make my father proud, I put myself into my academics. I was nose-deep in textbooks or working as an assistant at one of Dad's stores, while other youngsters were attending parties or hanging out at the mall. Every day after school, I would go to the store and pick up all the skills I could, including basic bookkeeping and customer service. I was motivated to establish my worth. In contrast, my sister has no interest in the family business. With a paintbrush in hand, she would create wild and vivid works while immersed in her own world. Dad made an effort to pique her curiosity, but it was an attempt akin to training a fish to climb a tree. One day after class, my dance teacher stated, "Jennifer, you've got real talent. Have you ever considered going into professional dance?" I wavered. To be honest, I always liked dancing because of its liberation, expressiveness, and sheer joy of movement, but I ignored the fact. "Miss Davis, thank you, but I have other plans." I applied to colleges for finance and management as high school was coming to an end. Although I didn't have the same natural aptitude for math and economics as I did for dancing, I gritted my teeth and persevered through late hours, numerous cups of coffee and more spreadsheets than I can recall. My sister, meanwhile, aced art school, hit it off with a guy, and tied the knot shortly after graduating. Her new spouse surprised everyone by taking a job at Dad's business. As I went across the stage with my diploma in hand on graduation day from college, I experienced a mixture of relief and resolve. I noticed my father in the crowd, beaming from ear to ear. That was it. I was prepared to assume the family company. The familiar sights and smells of my hometown enveloped me as soon as I got off the bus. Even though everything was different, it seemed like nothing had changed. I had changed. Instead of being the wide-eyed kid who had gone off to college, I was a woman with a purpose and a degree. I had always wanted to see my dad's proud smile, and there he was, waiting for me, leaning against his car. "Jen, welcome home," he replied, embracing me tightly. "All set to go to work?" With a steely spine and a nod, I was more than prepared. The following few weeks passed quickly. Dad got me started in accounting by handling the original paperwork. I pushed myself into it with gusto, even if it wasn't glamorous. Each and every ledger entry, invoice, and receipt was a step in my self-promotion. As the years went by, I moved up the corporate ladder to become deputy chief accountant. My new title was that. I felt like I was finally contributing something significant to the company, helping Dad organize the budget. Tom, my brother-in-law, was also moving up the ranks. He was appointed head of the supply department by Dad, and what a schmoozer that man was. His father cherished him and saw him as the son he never had. I made an effort not to allow it get to me by concentrating on my own work, but every time I saw them laughing together in Dad's office, I couldn't help but get a little jealous. Then there was the day that Dad summoned me to his office. I sat down opposite him, my heart thumping. "Jennifer, I've been thinking," he continued, his expression solemn. "Although you've done a fantastic job in accounting, I believe a change is in order." I held my breath, holding out hope that this would be the chance I'd been waiting for years. He grinned and added, "I'm making you manager of our retail chain, and Tom, He's going to be my deputy at the lens factory. It was as though I had taken a punch to the gut. While being the manager of the retail chain was an improvement, it wasn't what I had hoped for. And Tom, the man at the center of our enterprise, the factory, was suddenly second in command. I forced a smile and managed to respond, "Thanks, Dad. I'm not going to fail you." I had the unshakable conviction that, no matter how hard I worked, Tom would always come first. This feeling persisted as I left his office. After a few weeks, I immersed myself into my new position. I was keen to show that my abilities extended beyond simple math calculations. However, an odd thing happened next. While examining a fresh shipment of glasses, I observed certain inconsistencies in the documentation that Tom had supplied. The quality felt strange, and the statistics didn't add up. I caught up with Tom in the corridor and asked, "Hey, can we talk about these docs for the new shipment? Certain things are not quite clear." He gave the documents a cursory check. "Jen, everything is good. Most likely you're just overanalyzing it." I found his tone condescending and offensive. It was now about our company's credibility, not just about myself. I made the decision to look further. I went to headquarters and asked for a quality inspection of the most recent batch of lenses and eyewear. I was going to find out why something wasn't quite right. As I was studying the quality check results at my workstation, Dad stormed into my office, his face flushed. His ears were emitting so much steam that I could almost see them. "Jennifer, yell," he did. "Who authorized you to provide directives for quality checks? I think you're going too far, girl." Trying not to lose my temper, I took a deep breath. I examined the paperwork for the new cargo and found a few discrepancies. I was merely attempting to... Once more he cut me off. "To prove to everyone your intelligence? To disparage Tom's efforts?" His remarks hurt. "No, Papa. I was attempting to safeguard our business. Should there be a problem with the merchandise?" I recoiled as he threw his hand down on my desk and said, "Enough! You are not authorized to order business operations or schedule inspections. This company is led by me, not by you. Do you comprehend?" And with that, he rushed away, leaving me feeling small and foolish standing there. For days after that, I went through the motions at work. I did my job, nothing more, nothing less. The passion I once had felt like it had been sucked out of me. Then one evening, Mom called. "Jennifer, honey," she said, her voice excited, "your father's decided to retire. We want to throw him a party, and I was hoping you could help organize it." I felt a mix of emotions, relief that Dad was stepping down, anxiety about what that meant for the company, and a petty part of me that wanted to refuse just to spite him. But in the end, the part of me that still yearned for his approval won out. "Sure, Mom," I said. "I'd be happy to help." As I planned the party, an idea struck me. Dad had always loved jazz. What if I could get his favorite band to play at the party? It would be expensive, sure, but seeing the look on his face would be worth it. I called Mom to run the idea by her, and she agreed enthusiastically. We decided to split the cost, Mom, Sarah, and Tom. I called Sarah next. "Hey, sis," I said, "I've got an idea for Dad's retirement party. What do you think about getting his favorite jazz band to play?" There was a pause on the other end. "I don't know, Jen," Sarah said hesitantly. "Sounds expensive. Let me talk to Tom about it." I waited anxiously for her response. Hours turned into days, and finally, Sarah called back. "Sorry, Jen," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Tom says it's too expensive. We can't chip in." In the end, Mom and I split the cost ourselves. It was a stretch for my budget, but I was determined to make this party special for Dad. The night of the party arrived, and the venue was buzzing with excitement. The place looked fantastic, if I do say so myself. Soft jazz played in the background as guests mingled, waiting for the main event. As the evening progressed, the moment I'd been waiting for finally arrived. The lights dimmed, and the first notes of Dad's favorite jazz band filled the air. I held my breath, watching Dad's face. His eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with tears. He stood there, transfixed, as the music washed over him. I'd never seen him look so genuinely happy. "I can't believe it," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "They're here. They're really here." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. This was the moment I'd been working towards. I opened my mouth to tell Dad it was my idea when Tom suddenly appeared at Dad's side. "Surprise, Dad," Tom said, clapping Dad on the shoulder. "Sarah and I thought you'd like this little treat." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I took a step forward, ready to set the record straight, when I felt a hand on my arm. It was Mom. "Jennifer, honey," she said quietly, her eyes pleading. "Let it go. Don't spoil the moment for your father." I wanted to argue, to shout the truth from the rooftops, but looking at Dad's happy face, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I swallowed hard and nodded, forcing a smile. As the night wound down, Dad took the stage for a speech. I perked up, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd acknowledge my role in organizing everything. "Family," Dad began, his voice thick with emotion, "is everything. And tonight, as I prepare to step away from the company I built, I'm filled with gratitude for the support you've all given me." I smiled, waiting for my name to be mentioned. "But more than that," Dad continued, "I'm filled with hope for the future. Hope that this company will continue to thrive for generations to come. And that's why I've made a decision. It's time to pass the torch." I straightened up, my pulse pounding in my ears. This was it. All those years of hard work were about to pay off. "Tom," Dad said, turning to my brother-in-law with a proud smile, "I'm making you the new CEO of the company." The room erupted in applause, but I couldn't hear it over the roaring in my ears. "Tom?" He was giving the company to Tom. "Not only that," Dad continued, oblivious to my shock, "but I'm also entrusting our entire chain of eyewear stores to Tom's capable hands." I felt like I was going to be sick. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. After Dad's announcement, I approached him, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, what about me?" He looked at me, his expression a mix of pity and condescension that made my blood boil. "Jennifer, sweetheart," he said, patting my shoulder, "you're a woman, which means you're a priori stupid and incompetent in management matters. You don't understand anything about running a company." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But Dad, I've worked so hard. I dedicated my life to this company." He waved his hand dismissively. I know, and that's admirable. But let's face it, you've always been more interested in dancing, haven't you? Now you can pursue that without worrying about the company. Leave the business to those who can actually do it." Without another word, I turned and walked away. I grabbed my coat, ignored my mother's concerned calls, and stormed out of the restaurant. As the cool night air hit my face, I finally let the tears flow. A couple of hours later, I was already packing my bags. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away. Away from the family business, away from my father's crushing disappointment, away from Tom's smug face. My phone buzzed. It was my sister Sarah. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Jen," Sarah's voice was irritatingly chipper. "Where are you?" "Dad's looking for you. He wants to know when you're planning to serve the cake. Tom's got a sweet tooth, you know." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, they were worried about cake. "Tell your husband to figure out the cake situation himself," I snapped. "Chike, the big boss now, isn't he?" I hung up before she could respond, with my bags packed and my resignation letter emailed to HR. I left town. I ended up in a city a few hours away, determined to start fresh. It wasn't easy at first. I landed a junior position at a large auditing firm. The work was challenging, but I threw myself into it with everything I had. No more trying to please anyone but myself. Years passed. I climbed the corporate ladder, earning a reputation as a skilled and dedicated auditor. The firm gave me increasingly difficult and interesting cases, trusting my judgment and expertise. In the evenings, I danced. I found a studio near my apartment and started taking classes again. It felt like coming home, like rediscovering a part of myself I had buried for far too long. I barely spoke to my family during this time. Occasional calls with Mom, sure, but we kept things super official. I didn't ask about Dad or the business, and she didn't volunteer any information. Life was good. I had a high-paying job I excelled at, a beautiful apartment in a nice neighborhood, and I was finally pursuing my passion for dance. I felt free, truly happy for the first time in years. Then, one evening, everything changed again. I was walking home from dance class, my body pleasantly sore from a challenging routine, when I saw her. Sarah was standing outside my building, looking lost and disheveled. "Jennifer," she called out, her voice trembling, "I need your help." "How did you find me?" I asked. Sarah looked down, ashamed. "Mom gave me your address. We need your help, Jen. Tom's in trouble. The company, it's being audited by the tax authorities, and your firm is conducting the audit." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had a feeling I knew where this was going, but I let her continue. "We need you to influence the results of the audit," Sarah pleaded. "Just tell them everything's fine with the accounting. Please, Jen, we're family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously asking me to commit fraud? To risk my career, my reputation, everything I've built here?" Sarah nodded desperately. "I'll pay you $100,000. Please, Jen, we're desperate." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Tom had screwed up big time, and now they wanted me to cover for him, to jeopardize everything I'd worked for. "This conversation is over," I said, pulling out my phone. "If you ever suggest something like this again, I'm calling the police." Sarah's face crumpled. She placed a hand on her belly, and I noticed for the first time that she was pregnant. "Please, Jen," she begged. "Think of your niece or nephew. You wouldn't want them to grow up without a father, would you?" I felt a surge of anger. "Your pregnancy doesn't change the fact that your husband is a fraud," I spat. "Now leave before I call the cops." Sarah's demeanor changed instantly. She started screaming, hurling insults at me, causing a scene right there on the street. Passers-by began to stare, some pulling out their phones. I'd had enough. Without another word, I turned and walked into my building, leaving Sarah screaming on the sidewalk. A month passed after Sarah's unexpected visit. I threw myself into work, trying to forget about the whole ordeal. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. One evening, as I was reviewing some files for a particularly complex audit, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, I feared Sarah had returned. But when I opened the door, I was shocked to see my parents standing there. They looked older, more tired than I remembered. Dad, once the picture of confidence, now seemed small and defeated. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. "Jennifer," Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we come in?" "We need to talk." Hesitantly, I let them in. We sat in my living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. Finally, Dad spoke. "We've come to ask for your forgiveness," he said, his voice breaking. "We've made terrible mistakes, and we've wronged you deeply." What followed was a confession that left me reeling. Tom, the golden boy, the son my father never had been running a massive scam for years. He'd been buying counterfeit lenses cheaply from South Asia and passing them off as expensive branded products through our chain of stores, pocketing the difference. He'd been siphoning money into offshore accounts for years. A memory arose as they were talking. When I tried to look into differences in Tom's reports years ago, my father had shut me down and accused me of going too far. I now knew how accurate I had been. The results were disastrous. Allergy responses were being caused by the inferior products. Suits kept coming in. The business that my father had started from scratch and that he was so proud of was now on the verge of going bankrupt. With tears running down her cheeks, Mom continued. We were blind. We chose not to look at what was directly in front of us. Dad tentatively reached out and grasped my hand. Jennifer, we know it's not appropriate to ask, but we really need your assistance. The business requires you. Will you return and assume command? Right now, the only person who can save it is you. I stood there, hearing my parents' cries again. I felt tempted for a split second. It was an enticing task to save the company, to show everyone that I could do it. But suddenly, all the memories came flooding back, like a flood. When I was born, I saw my father's dismay rather than the son he had always desired. He had repeatedly written off my suggestions and attempts, saying I was inept and foolish, and had given Tom complete control so readily. The years I'd wasted trying to establish my worth only to be ignored. And now here they were, pleading with me to intervene and rescue them, to give up everything I had worked so hard to achieve for a business that was never really mine. I really gave them a close inspection. They were nonetheless wealthy in spite of the present situation. They possessed resources and money. This was a matter of pride more than survival, the legacy and pride of my father. I made up my mind right then. No, I said in a clear and unshakable voice. They appeared as though they were in disbelief at what they were hearing. I don't want to talk to you anymore, and I'm not ready to forgive you. When you were calling me incompetent, where had all this worry been, while you were giving Tom my birthright? You didn't give me any thought back then, did you?